Okay, let's talk about a company that is just a true global fashion titan, but one that seems to play by a completely different set of rules than everybody else. A brand that's become a household name, really, by being an absolute enigma. We're talking, of course, about Zara. Bloomberg Originals hit the nail on the head when they called it a successful enigma full of contradictions. And that is the perfect way to describe it. I mean, think about it. You'd expect a global fashion empire to be headquartered in, what, Paris, Milan, maybe New York? Nope. Zara's home base is in a quiet, rural corner of northern Spain. And in an industry that is obsessed with advertising, Zara spends, well, next to nothing. So the big question is, how on earth does this work? What's the secret that has made Zara so incredibly successful? And maybe more importantly, in a world full of new challenges, can it actually last? That's what we're going to break down right here. So how did Zara become Zara? Well, it all started by basically breaking all the rules. Let's start with the paradox that's really at the heart of its success. To get the scale here, you have to look at its parent company, Inditex. It's this publicly traded behemoth valued at over $183 billion. And Zara? It isn't just a part of that empire, it is the engine, driving a whopping 70% of the company's total sales and giving Inditex its incredible global name recognition. So who are they selling all this stuff to? Well, Zara has absolutely mastered targeting the aspirational shopper. The person who sees the high fashion runway trends, loves the look, but doesn't exactly have a high fashion budget. Zara gives them that chic look for a whole lot less. And that brings us to the core of their secret sauce, the thing that really turned the entire industry on its head. Let's look inside their revolutionary fashion engine. You hear the term fast fashion thrown around all the time, right? Well, you can pretty much thank Zara for that. The New York Times actually coined the phrase when Zara first opened a store in the city. And what it all boils down to is one thing: speed. The ability to spot a trend and get it on the shelf in just record time. So how fast is fast when we're talking about Zara? Get this. They have perfected a 6-week pipeline that takes an idea and puts it in your closet. It all starts with data. Store managers are constantly feeding real-time info about what's selling back to designers in Spain. Those designers sketch something up, it gets produced, and then shipped out. The result? A product goes from a simple sketch to a store shelf in just 6 weeks. And new stuff is arriving twice a week. It's relentless. How do they do it that fast? It's all about something called proximity sourcing. See, while most of their rivals were outsourcing everything to factories in Asia to save costs, Zara kept more than half of its production close to home, in places like Spain, Portugal, Morocco, and Turkey. And that gives them incredible speed and flexibility. And that agility, well, it's a huge competitive advantage. For instance, back in 2024, their rival H&M literally blamed poor sales on bad weather. Can you imagine? Zara's model lets them adapt to stuff like that on the fly. They can churn out what customers want, when they want it, no matter what the forecast says. Okay, so you have this lightning-fast production model. That's one part of the puzzle. But what about getting the word out? That brings us to the next paradox: how they built a global brand with almost no traditional marketing. I mean, just look at the difference here. It's wild. Your typical fashion retailer, they're probably spending around 4% of their sales on marketing. Zara, less than 1%. They've almost completely checked out of the whole glossy magazine ads and expensive TV commercials game that their competitors live and die by. So, if they're not buying ads, how do people even find out about them? Well, it's all about organic buzz. It's when high-profile people like Queen Letizia of Spain are just photographed out and about wearing Zara. That kind of publicity, you literally can't buy it. And it just reinforces that brand image of being chic, but also really accessible. And what do they do with all that money they're not sinking into ad budgets? They pour it right back into their stores. They've been making their stores bigger and bigger, turning them into these beautiful destinations in prime locations. The store itself becomes the marketing. Okay, so this all sounds like a perfect success story, right? But The playbook that made ZARA an absolute titan is now facing its biggest test yet. There are new, even faster rivals on the scene, and the environmental cost of the industry that ZARA helped create is coming under some really intense scrutiny. And these are the new kids on the block, the ultra-fast fashion giants like Shein and Temu. They basically took ZARA's model and put it on steroids. They're targeting younger customers with even faster production cycles. We're talking days, not weeks. And because they're privately held companies, they operate with a lot less transparency, which puts even more of a spotlight on established public players like ZARA, especially when it comes to this staggering reality right here. Over the last 2 decades, global clothing production has doubled. It's grown 100%, far, far outpacing the growth of the world's population. We are simply buying and throwing away way more clothes than ever before. And the scale of that waste is just hard to comprehend. Take this number, 10 billion. That is how many kilograms of clothing are thrown away or destroyed every single year, in the United States alone. It's a direct consequence of this culture of overconsumption. And this model comes at a huge environmental cost. It relies on materials that are incredibly intensive to produce, needing tons of water and energy. And get this, the fashion industry as a whole is now responsible for a shocking 20% of the world's plastic production. At its core, it's a model that just promotes a disposable culture. So, with these new rivals on one side and this enormous environmental pressure on the other, the challenge now falls to ZARA's new leadership. How are they possibly going to steer this giant ship through such turbulent waters? Now, in response to all this criticism, ZARA has started making some very public pledges. They're aiming for net zero emissions by 2040. They've even introduced repair services to try to extend the life of their clothes. These are definite steps to try and push back against that negative image. But here's the fundamental challenge, isn't it? Can these kinds of initiatives, however good they are, ever really be enough to offset the environmental damage caused by the sheer volume of clothing the fast fashion model is built to produce, year in and year out? And this is the key challenge facing Marta Ortega. She's the daughter of ZARA's founder, and she became chairwoman in 2022. She inherited this wildly successful company, but now she has to evolve the very playbook her father created if it's going to survive and prosper in the future. And that leaves us with the final, critical question. The company that basically defined an entire era of fashion is now at a massive crossroads, forced to confront the consequences of its own success. So, can ZARA do it again? Can it actually reinvent the fast fashion playbook that it helped write in the first place? Well, only time will tell.